From district icons to people whose longtime loyal service to the Plymouth Canton Community Schools made the district what it is today. These are the stories of the people of PCCS. It's My PCCS Life on 88.1 The Park. Good evening, and welcome to another edition of My PCCS Life on 88.1 The Park. I'm John Kreger, and this is another edition of a show that shares the stories behind the dedicated professionals whose work for PCCS help make the Plymouth Canton Community Schools what it is today. Our guest for this evening's chat is nothing short of a pioneer in the almost 200-year history of our district. You see, while our student body has become a diverse tapestry of the cultures that make up Plymouth Canton, until the late 2000s, the members of the school board that oversee PCCS hadn't been people of color. In 2009, Adrienne Davis changed that. When she was elected to the board, she became its first black member. She's an entrepreneur, a leader, and a parent of proud district graduates. And she joins us today on My PCCS Life. Adrienne Davis, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, normally I finish these interviews with a question of why PCCS. But your time with the district predates involvement with the Board of Education. In fact, you put children through the PCCS district and had the experience of being a district parent. So I'm going to start with, what about the district made you want to choose to educate your children here?
I guess it was kind of destined that I was supposed to be here. I was looking for a quality public education, and I had some expectations that I needed from what I wasn't, receiving. My oldest son was in kindergarten, and the school district that we were in just weren't giving us what we needed and expected. So literally what happened, my husband was working in Flat Rock at the time, and he put me on the 275 corridor. So I literally shop schools and school districts. So if I found a house, I would literally visit the elementary school. And I must tell you, it was Isbister Elementary School, and the principal at the time, Lee Harrison, in which I had a special feeling that it was the place that we needed to be.
When you talk with Mr. Harrison about his time with you as a parent, he said that you were a parent who helped him to understand, helped him to grow in terms of diversity issues, in terms of a passionate advocate for your children. Tell me a little bit about how you worked to make the educational experience better for all of our students.
I started my professional career with Xerox Corporation. Xerox was a leader in diversity. Equity, the words change depending on what decade you're in. I really attribute a lot of the training in my comfort in working in diverse or environments that are not diverse, and how do you work together from that experience and the training that we have. Because right now, I think we're making too big a deal of the labels. We're people. It's humanity. We're basically the same. I often say to people, whatever your blood type is, if you were in trouble and you needed a transfusion, didn't really matter what ethnicity the person is if they were going to save your life.
You were a district parent. You had a chance to observe what it was like to raise children in this district. And then in 2009, you make the decision to run for the Board of Education. Why?
I did not like one of the first trainings in diversity that the district hired. It was called Courageous Conversations. I'll give you a really good example. Lee called me in for a meeting where he had to interview a parent. And I just, oh my gosh, what is this? I just didn't like it. And I remember when I got on the board and the trainer, he was a black man. He expected me to fall into his training. And he was highlighting things that I did not think helped people in a teamwork, having like-mindedness. Because I think the most important in any diversity, multicultural, find out what you have in common and build from that. And I think one of the great examples of that is food. When we try different foods or try different cuisines from all over the world, and we talk about it and we talk about spice and texture and character, it opens up your perspective and your viewpoint. And if we would interact with one another the way that we interact with food, in many instances, I think a meal could solve a lot of problems. I'll put it that way.
You make the decision to run for the board. We had not had a Black Board of Education member at the time. Did you ever sit and think about that and say, I'm going to be courageous and be the first to try to be the first Black Board of Education member?
It wasn't being the first Black. It was making an impact with education. It was impacting the lives of students. The first thing that I'm an advocate for kids. People who know me, people still call me, how do I do this? And it's not necessarily if they're black, white, green, or purple. They know that I care about kids. I've trained a lot of parents in different genres, be it special education, be it someone who was trying to get their child wanted to be a band parent. There's certain skill sets when you're trying to get the best outcome for your particular student that works best. I am a teacher's kid. Both my parents were educators. I don't understand in this current trend that how in some instances parents are treating teachers. A teacher is a human being. Do you really think if you give them the riot act or try to intimidate them, that will have a good outcome for your child? No. And we have to come to a common ground.
You talk about the change in education and the change in advocacy for parents. How did the district change, do you think, while you were on the Board of Education?
I can't say that the district changed when I was on the Board of Education. You said in your introduction, 200 years. The district, when I was the board, had strong, ingrained cultures. I was only one person. So my take on that was, how can I impact or influence it for good? What I can tell you, I was a part of a policy committee where we wrote the first, at the time it was 2260 diversity policy. It wasn't, first we started with diversity, then it became equity. It was writing that policy. I still go, it's always humanity. What would you have an expectation? When I came on the board, the policy was kind of convoluted. It was more punitive in its structure, not the whole policy, but a portion that was supposed to deal with diversity. And we rounded it out and made it from the perspective of the impact of the child, of the teacher, of the administrator, and what we were trying to accomplish.
You mentioned food a while back. You didn't know it was going to segue into a question of mine. Now, I've done a lot of things in my life. I've never been on the White House lawn. You have. You were recognized during the Obama administration by First Lady Michelle Obama for your work with the Healthy Food in Schools initiative. Tell me about that and about that day, being a part of that recognition.
Oh, that was really special, and I can say one of the highlights of my board experience. But what I really would like to highlight is that we really earned that with the staff. And what Kristen did at the time, that was really impactful. You know, when we really took out a lot of the sugary drinks and more processed foods, that had a real impact. And being on the lawn was a really fun experience because you know how they say that there's 6 degrees of separation? I happen to have a good friend who grew up with Michelle Obama. So his name is Christopher Johnson, and Diane Gonzalez was the other board member. We were together, and Diane to this day will tease me about this. This was at the end of her speech, and I yelled out, "Christopher Johnson, I'm his friend." She stopped, she looked at me and said, "Yes, Chris and I grew up together." So that was like that was like a real fun experience. And Diane teased me, and she says, you know everybody. And that was a real special experience. And to be with other board members from across the country, that was a lot of fun. It was a beautiful fall day. The weather was perfect, and we had a great time.
I want to tie that experience into an experience we had earlier this school year here at P-CCS, where members of the USDA came in, and Kristen Hennessy, you mentioned Kristen, was in the spotlight again as we were the focal point for the launching of a new initiative that will reduce the amount of sugars in flavored milk,
Really?
so that it is more healthy. I want to go back to and tie that other initiative in. Why was it so important to you in advocating for kids to make sure at the time that policy needed to be better and our schools needed to serve kids healthier lunches?
Well, it's what we're learning about the human body and the nutrients in your brain for learning. All of that ties together for getting effective outcomes for our students. So it all connects.
Now, I know you have a relationship with Dr. Monica Merritt, our current superintendent of schools. Do you ever sit back and take a look at her leadership and how that role has, something that you started in bringing perspective to the board leads now to her leadership here?
I think of her being a leader, a strong educator, and a strong management skill set that enables her to lead the district in a humane and compassionate, caring manner, yet with very strong managerial experiences that enables her to push the district forward and make sure that the strong tradition of Plymouth Canton, she's very mindful of Plymouth Canton is Plymouth Canton Community Schools. And I really think that community being in the name it's just not a moniker. It's really represents the community and their traditions in the history. So Monica was very strong, and Monica was hired when I was on the board. And she had a real huge impact in our human resources department.
I know you also founded Different Drums, an initiative to teach students about entrepreneurship, but also to help close the achievement gap. Where did the idea for that come from?
Well, it's seeing a need and filling it. What do kids need? When I look at things that I've done with kids, it will be something that I see that there's a need. What does the future hold? And how do we prepare and get students ready? In fact, I'm moving now toward a new organization.
Breaking news here on 88.1 The Park.
I'm really excited about and really look forward to working with the district. You could say, be an evolution of Different Drums. I am founding Color Genius. Color Genius is where we cultivate curiosity and ignite learning. It's a learning platform that is culturally relevant, that uses students' interests, their identity, and their culture. And I'm right at this EdTech startup phase, and we're seeking funding right now. And our timing is really cool in being able to impact students. I worked last year with the University of Michigan graduate students in their information sciences school department, and they made a mid-fi prototype for me that I am trying to develop now. So I'm really excited about that, and perhaps you can bring me back once we get that up and running.
I would love nothing more. One of the things that you were always focused on, I know from talking to different people about you, is making sure that we close achievement gaps for all students. What do you think is the best way to do that?
I don't think there's a best way to do it, because there's so many variables. I'm all about the whole child learning model. It's just not like reading, writing, arithmetic. Well, what's happening in the home? what's happening with the child. What are their strengths? What are their gifts? What are their talents? Again, I always go back to humanity, being a human being. So what makes that person special? Oftentimes, what I found, and that's one of the things I seek to do with Color Genius, is be a part of the scaling of supplemental learning, in that often when kids have gaps, it means there's something missing in the foundation. How do you strengthen a child's foundation? How do you give them an opportunity to help themselves? How do you build student agency? In answering your question, and I'd rather go global, in closing gaps, it's more than the school. It's the parent, it's the family, it's the community, it's after school programs. But when teachers, what I can say, we have teachers that key into the individual student, the individual personality, and their needs, and relate to students. I'm sure, John, there's some teacher that made an impact on you. Was there a teacher that took an interest in John?
Oh, I've got 5 or 6 of them. Absolutely.
And
life-changing.
Yes. So that kind of focus and energy and concern, which I can say hundreds of teachers in Plymouth Gantt possess, because what makes this district what it is truly the stellar teaching staff. And one of the things that I have been excited to see is that we have grown in our diversity of teachers than when I started on the board. That is, if there's a legacy of impact that I can say, one of the things that I am most proud of is the impact that I had on diversifying the teaching staff.
You know, it's interesting you talk about achievement. When we look at our recent MSTEP and NWA data, we haven't seen as much drop-off here in Plymouth Canton as other districts have around the state through the pandemic. So you've talked about diversification. You've talked about your impact there. You've talked about meeting the needs of children. I asked you in our first question, why did you choose to bring your kids to PCCS? If you could say 10, 20, 30 years down the road, why PCCS? What does the district look like in your ideal world to be the answer to that question? That why people would want to come here and learn?
A welcoming, caring, equipped, stellar, talented place and an environment that puts kids first.
That is a wonderful way to finish our program. It's been a wonderful chat with you, and I'm going to remember your story about the White House for a long time because it's one of the few things that I haven't gotten a chance to do in life. But really, in hearing you talk with us for this chat today, it is clear that you are someone who has always had kids at heart. Thank you for sharing some of that with me today. It's been a truly wonderful chat.
And thank you. I was really honored to hear from you. I mean, it's been 10 years. So when you get a call from 10 years ago, it makes you feel that maybe I did do a little something around the district.
I promise you wouldn't be here today if you hadn't. You left a lasting impact, and we are so thrilled that you were here with us.
Thank you so much, John.
That is Adrienne Davis, who served on the Board of Education from 2009 to 2014, was instrumental in helping our kids get better lunches and improving our diversity as a district and making PCCS what it is. I'm John Kreger, and this has been another edition of My PCCS Life. You can catch episodes of My PCCS Life here on 88.1 The Park and on the official PCCS YouTube channel. For Adrienne Davis, I'm John Kreger. Thanks for listening, and good evening.